Hungarian Folk Tales. The Horse Egg. There once lived a peasant who found a giant pumpkin in the meadow. What on earth could this be, he thought. So he bent down, lifted the giant pumpkin up, felt it and smelt it, but he still had no clue what it was. So he took the pumpkin to the village council. The councillors were in the middle of an important meeting when the farmer walked in and plonked the giant pumpkin on the table. And this surprised them all. I have lived a very long life, but I have never seen anything like that before. I have experienced a lot in my life, but I have never come across anything like that before. And I'm not a young man either, but I really couldn't tell you what on earth that is. Then the village mayor added wisely, "Gentlemen, this peculiar object, judging by its shape, cannot be anything else but an egg." Of course, what else could it be? It must be an egg. The peasant agreed and added that the egg-like object had been warm when he first found it. The local mayor had a very clever mind, and so he wanted to know exactly what kind of egg this might be. The old village leaders thought it could possibly be a terrible green dragon's egg. However, the mayor was inclined to agree with the farmer, who said that he had recently seen a strange horse in the very same meadow. The village leaders liked the sound of this and said, "It must be so. Nothing other than a horse could have laid such a giant egg." "Good. So tell me, my friends, what should we do next?" "Why, you must catch it, of course." "Yes, but what animal could do it?" "All horses don't lay eggs, so they could never hatch it." Everyone thought hard what to do. But then the mayor had an idea. "Gentlemen of the council, if the local horses are too stupid to hatch an egg, then we, the village council, should do it. We, gentlemen, must hatch the giant egg. That's what I say." This sounded like a wonderful idea, and everyone nodded in agreement. The village mayor decided to set an example, and so he was the first to sit on the giant egg, and then the gentlemen of the council followed one after the other. And they would all be still sitting on it today if the people in the next village had not spread the rumour that it had gone bad under their bottoms. they heard this, the local leaders protested and refused to sit on the egg for a day longer. This made the mayor very sad because he said he was sure he had felt the horse moving inside it. But the village leaders were convinced the egg was rotten and it smelled very bad. But each stuck to their own side of the story. In the end, the council voted and decided to take the egg to the top of a hill and roll it down onto the people of the village below who had teased them so. The men, women and children of the village all walked up to the top of a nearby hill and prepared to punish their neighbours with the stinking egg. Everyone pinched their noses and the mayor began to roll the egg. And the giant egg rolled down and rolled down the hill until it rolled into the bushes at the bottom. This is where it broke in two just as a rabbit ran out of the bushes. And all the villagers cried out, "There goes the horse! Come on, let's catch it!" And they all gave chase to the rabbit. Only the mayor stayed standing on top of the hill and muttered sadly to himself, "I told them that something was moving inside. We should have had the patience to sit on the egg for another day, and it would have grown into a fine, strong horse." Hungarian Folk Tales. Abeles, Kobeles. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there lived a king. One day the king was out hunting in the forest and became so very lost that he could not find his way. "I wish someone would lead me out of this frightening forest and I would give him a sack of gold for his troubles." "Follow me and I will lead the way." And that's what he did. "You should know, King, that I need neither money nor anything else. But give me that what you have now, but did not have before you left your palace this morning." The king thought and thought that he must mean a cat, or something simple like that. When the king arrived home, his servants ran out to meet him, shouting, "Make haste, your majesty, because you have a beautiful baby daughter, more radiant than the sun itself." But to make a long story short, the little man had said that he would only come to fetch the girl on her 15th birthday. When the king saw how pretty the princess was, he knew not whether to weep with joy or with sorrow. The queen said to him, "Are you not happy?" "Oh yes, I'm happy, very happy," the king said, and he told her the story. Days became months and months became years, and the princess grew. On her 15th birthday, the devil appeared because the little man was really the devil. "Send your daughter out, king, for I have come to collect her at last." "Oh dear, oh dear." The king and the queen wept and wailed. "What can we possibly do?" The gooseherd's daughter was also there, so they quickly dressed her in golden robes studded with diamonds. Then they put a crown on her head, opened the door and sent her out. The devil had a wheelbarrow that he made the girl sit in, and he pushed her away. He pushed her past water where geese were swimming. When the geese saw the girl, they began to gaggle. "Ga, ga, ga, where are you going, goose girl?" "I'm going to hell and the devil's taking me." "You're not the real princess?" the devil asked. "No, not at all. I'm the gooseherd's daughter." So the devil grew so angry that he tipped the girl from the barrow and left her there. The devil marched back to the royal palace. "Listen, king, if you won't give me your daughter, I'll smash your door in." "Oh dear," wailed the king and the queen. The swineherd's daughter was also there, so they quickly dressed her in golden robes studded with diamonds. Then they put a crown on her head, opened the door, and sent her out. The pig soon began to grunt. "Where are you going, pig girl?" "I'm going to hell, and the devil's taking me." "You're not the real princess?" the devil asked. "No, not at all. I'm the swineherd's daughter." "Listen, king, open the door and give me the princess, or else I shall set your palace on fire." The king and the queen were both terrified, so they dressed their daughter while they wept, and they pushed her out of the door. The devil was delighted. He put the girl straight into his barrow and wheeled her to hell. Once there, she met a boy called John, who had also been stolen away from somewhere. They were both forced to work hard. John toiled all day in the stable, and the princess did the cooking, the baking, the cleaning, and she looked after the devil. Time passed, and John and the princess spent all their time together. One day John said, "Princess, we should both run away from the devil." "But how could we do that?" "I know a magic spell. I overheard the devil say it. I shall cast a spell on the broom and spit on it. Then the broom will answer for us when the devil tries to find us." That sounds like a wonderful plan. So they waited until the devil fell fast asleep, put the broom by the door, and John spat on its handle. "Speak for us when the devil calls us." Now the devil woke up. "Where are you, princess? Bring me my clothes. I want to get dressed." "Right away," the broom replied. The devil waited for a while and then called again. "Are you bringing my slippers? What takes you so long?" "I'm coming right away." "Wait until I catch you, you naughty child. Where are you, naughty girl?" "Here I am." "Where are you, manservant? Quickly sit on a shovel and ride off after them into the sky. Catch them and bring them back to me." "John, my left ear is itching. Look back." "Oh dear, princess. The devil's servant is after us and he's very close. Let us quickly do magic. I will be an old priest and you can become a church." And so that is what they did. "Listen, old priest, have you seen young John and a princess passing this way?" The old priest pretended to be praying. "Abeles, corbeles, abeles, corbeles." "Old priest, don't chant verse to me, but tell me if you have seen John and the young princess." "Abeles, corbeles, abeles, corbeles." Then the devil's servant sat back on the shovel and flew back to hell. The young couple turned quickly back, the church became the princess, and the old priest became John, and the two of them continued. "Have you seen them? Could you reach them? Did you bring them back?" "I saw no one except an old priest and a church." "But the priest was a fool and simply said, 'Abeles, corbeles,' to all of my questions." "Oh, that was them. Where is my other servant? He should sit on a hot iron and fly away after them." "John, my right ear is itching. Look back." So John looked back and saw the devil's servant flying after them on a red-hot iron. "Let us quickly make magic. You will become a cornfield, and I shall become a farmer, watching his golden field of corn." Then the devil's servant flew down from the sky. "Listen, old farmer, have you seen young John and a princess passing this way?" "Shoo, shoo, sparrows, shoo, shoo. Shoo, pigeons, shoo, shoo, shoo." "Old farmer, don't say shoo to me, but tell me if you have seen John and the young princess." "Shoo, sparrows, shoo, shoo, shoo. Shoo, pigeons, shoo, shoo, shoo." "The farmer's as mad as the priest," manservant said, and rode straight back to the devil. "Did you see them? I saw no one except a field of corn and a wild farmer who shooed away all the birds." "Oh, that was them, the rogues. I shall have to go myself." "Oh, John, both my ears are itching now. Look back." "Oh, princess, now the devil is hot behind us. Hurry, and you'll become a golden duck, and I'll become a pond." "Now wait. I know who you are. I'll catch you and take you back. I swear I will." and the devil went into the water to catch the golden duck, but the duck kept swimming further in. The devil gave chase and swam further still until he reached the middle of the pond, where the water was the deepest, and the devil drowned. Then they both changed magically back. The pond became John, and the golden duck, the princess. Then they both went back to the princess's home. The king and the queen were overjoyed. They held a wonderful wedding, and they all lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. Jack Crow. Once upon a time, a very long time ago, there lived an elderly couple who had nothing in the world except a young son they called Jack Crow. As soon as the boy was old enough to know his own mind, he told his parents, "I've decided to go out into the world to find work with a wealthy family." His elderly parents did not protest, and so Jack Crow set forth to seek his fortune. When he reached the edge of the village, he caught sight of a swarm of ants marching from one field to the next across the road. And right at the back, he saw a single lame ant that fell by the wayside and could not rejoin its friends. So Jack Crow helped the little ant back to its tiny feet. "Thank you for your kind help," said the ant. "In return for your good deed, I shall give you this whistle. Whenever you're in trouble, blow it, and I'll come to your aid in an instant." So Jack Crow put it in his pocket and continued on his way. As the moon rose in the sky, he found himself in the middle of a vast forest, where a white-haired old man lived in a small house. "Good evening, old man," said Jack. "Good evening to you too, son. What brings you to this distant place?" the old man asked. "I'm looking for a wealthy family who will employ me to work, but now I simply need shelter for the night," Jack Crow told him. So the old man let him stay for the night, and in the morning he gave him some wise advice. "Well, my boy, you should follow the track through the forest, where you will find a vast meadow. There you'll discover a giant mountain. On top of that mountain stands a castle crafted from pure gold, and that is where the king resides. I happen to know that the king needs servants, so I suggest you go there to seek employ." So Jack Crow thanked the old man and continued on his way. When he reached the edge of the forest, he noticed a flock of crows flying around something on the ground a little way ahead. There he found a crow flapping helplessly around because its feathers were heavy with morning dew and it could not get off the ground. Young Jack took pity on the bird, picked it up and petted and patted it until all its feathers had dried. Then the bird said, "Now hear me, Jack Crow. You've done me a good deed, so in turn I shall give you this whistle. If you're ever in trouble, blow it, and I shall come to your aid in an instant." Jack soon came to the foot of the mountain on the shores of the sea. As he stood and stared out, he saw the waves toss a fish from the waters that landed flapping on the ground. Jack took pity on the fish and gently helped it back into the salty water. When the fish was fully recovered, it said, "In return for your good deed, you can expect another. I know you have 2 whistles already, so let me give you a third. If ever you're in trouble, blow it, and I'll come to your aid in an instant." So Jack hurried to the castle on top of the mountain. There the king greeted him and asked, "Well, what can I do for you, my fine fellow?" "I seek work with a wealthy family, your majesty." And the king said, "In my kingdom, 3 days are the same as a full year. The payment is 300 florins, and you can eat and drink your fill. But if you fail to obey my commands, I shall have you executed." On the first day, just after sunset, the king had Jack brought before him and said, "Now hear me, Jack Crow. You are now my servant, so I command you go into the barnyard where you'll find 3 piles of millet. By morning, I want you to sort the seeds from the straw. If you fail to complete my command, I shall have you executed." Jack Crow was worried out of his wits. What should he do? Then he suddenly remembered the whistle the ant had given him, and he blew it. Out of nowhere, A huge swarm of ants appeared. There were so many of them that not even 1,000,000 men could have counted them. "How can we help you, Jack, my friend?" "I've been given a task impossible to complete," Jack said. And he told the ant what the king had commanded. "Have no fear," the ants told him. "We'll get hard to work and sort all the seeds from the straw by morning." By the time the sun had risen in the morning sky, the millet seeds and the straw were in 2 separate stacks. The king said, "I see you've done a good job, so now you are free for the rest of the day. But you must report to me again this evening." When evening came, the king said, "My faithful servant, I command you to go to the front of my castle where my 3 daughters are strolling back and forth. I want you to make sure they come to no harm. If you fail your task, I'll have you executed." Jack did as he was bid and sat down in front of the entrance to the castle to keep watch over the 3 princesses. And as Jack sat there, he grew so bored and tired that he fell fast asleep. And the 3 princesses turned into crows and flew away. Young Jack woke with a start to see the girls had vanished. He was worried out of his wits until he remembered the whistle the crow had given him. He blew the whistle and a flock of crows arrived. "How can we help you, friend?" "I am so very sad because I have a task impossible to complete. The king commanded me to watch over his 3 daughters, but I dozed off and all 3 princesses vanished," Jack replied. "Fear not," the crows told him. "We shall find them for you. Climb up on my back and we'll fly off in search of the 3 lost princesses." So Jack climbed onto the crow's back and they flew off into the distance, but the princesses were nowhere to be found. So then they flew behind the moon, where they saw the princesses in the shape of crows. Then Jack threw 3 reins around the crows' necks and led them slowly back down into the castle courtyard. On the evening of the 3rd day, the king again ordered that Jack be brought before him. The king said, "I command you to go and find the gold ring which fell off my finger today and rolled into the sea. If you fail the task, I'll have you executed." Jack knew that this was impossible to solve alone, and so he ran to the seashore, where he blew on the whistle that the fish had given him. A shoal of fish appeared in an instant and asked, "How can we help you, friend?" There Jack Crow quickly told them what he had been commanded to do. "Don't worry, friend," said the king of the fish. "We shall do our best to find that ring for you." The fish searched and dawn was almost breaking, but they still had not found the ring, until they found it in the belly of an enormous goldfish. "Well, my faithful servant," said the king, "you've done an honest job of serving me. In return, I will give you the hand of one of my daughters in marriage, half of my kingdom, and 3 cartloads of gold for good measure." However, Jack Crow did not want to marry and did not want half the kingdom, for all he wanted was the gold, and the king happily gave it to him. Jack Crow drove the 3 carts home to his beloved parents, where they ate good food and drank fine wine, and all lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Gold Coin and the Hat. I want to tell you the story of 3 young men and a hat. The 3 young men were all big-bearded fellows, and one day they decided that the time had come to go out and seek their fortunes in the great wide world. They walked and walked until they came to a little village, and as they neared the village, they met an old man. And one of the young men said, "How many days are there in the world, old man?" "1 less with today, young man," the old man replied. "And are there any good men left in the world?" "Roses still bloom even when they're surrounded by weeds." "Now that was clever," the young man said. "I'll ask you one more question. What does an old man have under his hat? Come to the inn, young men, and I'll tell you there." The young men were penniless, but they still went with the old man. But the old man was the first to enter, and he told the innkeeper to keep pouring them wine until they had 5 florins worth. So all 4 men took a seat at the table, and the innkeeper poured wine, and they drank it and had a very jolly time indeed. But when they had drunk 5 florins worth, the innkeeper stopped serving them and politely asked, "Now, gentlemen, who will pay for all this fine wine?" The young men would have willingly paid, but they were penniless. "So then the hat will pay," the old man said. And he took off his hat, shook it, and a gold coin fell out. The young men were very surprised by this sight and keen to get their hands on the old man's valuable hat. Then all they would have to do was to shake it, and the ground would be covered in gold coins. They pleaded and appealed to the old man to sell them his hat and to name his price. "Very well," the old man said. "You can see that I am indeed an old man, and so 500 florins would be enough for the few years I have left. So that is my price for the hat, young sirs." The young gentlemen all ran to the count and asked to borrow 500 florins, and the count was happy to comply. So they paid the old man the price for the hat, and he went home. Then the hearty young fellows continued to eat and drink and make merry until a very late hour that night. And when the time came to pay, they shook the old man's hat, but nothing fell out. Not even a single gold coin. What were the poor fools to do? They could not pay, and so the innkeeper made them all stay and work to pay for the wine they had drunk that night. The moment the innkeeper let them go, they hurried to find the old man who had sold them the hat. "Let's go and look for him in the village, and we'll teach that old man a lesson for cheating us so." The old man got wind of their arrival and tried to hide all over the house, but his wife still found him wherever he hid. Then his wife said to him at last, "You silly old fool, don't try and hide. It's much better if you pretend to be dead. Lie on the bench and I shall put a sheet over you, and when the young men come, I shall tell them that you're dead, and they will not be able to do a thing with a dead man." So that's exactly what they did, and the wife began to weep for her dead husband. "Oh, my dearest darling husband, why did you die and leave me here all alone?" When the young men appeared, they asked the wife why she was crying so. "What happened? Why are you crying, old lady?" "How could I not cry, my dears? My husband is lying dead on the bench, and I am left here to fend for myself alone. But do not mourn his loss, for he was a terrible rogue." But then one of the young men sighted a stick in the corner of the room, and he could not resist giving the old man's body a prod. "Take that, you scoundrel, for the money you stole from us." Then the old man leapt up and put his hands together in thanks. "Oh, God bless you, gentlemen. Behold, now I believe in the miraculous power of the stick. Listen here. I was walking in the fields one day when I saw a dead dog lying there. I prodded the dead dog with this selfsame stick, and it jumped up and ran away. But now I know better than ever that this stick has the power to perform miracles. Wife, give these young men all we possess, and we will keep only this stick. Then, when a rich man dies, I will raise him back from the dead and be richly rewarded for my miraculous deed." "Not so fast," the young men said. "We don't want your possessions, we want your miraculous stick." The old man was not willing to hand it over at first, but then he agreed. "You made fools of us once before, but never again. God bless you, old man." Then the old man laughed and gave them the stick. The young men were walking back through the village when they passed the house of the Count. There they saw a hearse and 6 horses about to set off in a funeral procession. So the young gentleman asked who was about to be buried. The people told them, "Why, the young Countess, of course. There you can see her mother, father, and handsome bridegroom standing behind the coffin." The young men did not waste a minute and ran up to the old countess. They demanded that she open the coffin that instant so they might raise the young countess from the dead. Then the old countess did as the young men said and promised them all the treasure she had if only they could bring her daughter back from the dead. So one of the young men approached the coffin and tapped the young countess lightly on the throat with a miraculous stick. She looked dead 1 minute and was alive the next. Everyone was delighted, and now they would have a wedding instead of a wake. And they all ate and drank and had a very good time. The young men received a cart full of gold for their troubles and were so happy that they even gave the old man a sack of gold when they passed his house again. Strange as it may sound, they never tried their luck with the stick a second time because they still thought that the old man might have tricked them after all. So they all went back to school to complete their studies. So that is how this story ends. If you liked it, tell it to your friends. Hungarian Folk Tales. Pinko. Once upon a time, there lived an old woodcutter who was poorer than a mouse. One day the woodcutter said to his wife, "Wife of mine, please bake me 2 corn cakes that I can take them out to work with me so that I won't have to come home to eat." So the woodcutter's wife baked the cakes, put them in the woodcutter's bag, and he set off to work in the forest. Down in the forest lived old Paluto, and old Paluto had a young son called Pinko. Pinko listened keenly to the sound of the woodcutter's axe and watched the old woodcutter from the shadows. Then the crafty boy took the woodcutter's bag down and gobbled up both the corn cakes. But old Paluto got wind of what his son had done. "Where are you, Pinko?" old Paluto called out to his son. "Here I am, father." "Come quickly, where have you been?" "I have just gobbled up the old woodcutter's corn cakes." "As you felt no pity for the poor woodcutter, you will now have to serve for 3 long years in return. Do you understand?" This news saddened Pinko, but he agreed to do his father's bidding. So he turned on his heels and went back to the woodcutter. When he arrived, he said, "Woodcutter, I am the one who ate your corn cakes. So be happy, my child, and don't sound so sad. But it doesn't work like that because my father has punished me and told me that I should work as your servant for 3 long years. There is no need, my child, because I could never pay you, but I can earn my own living." And wonder of wonders, Pinko plucked the trees from the ground and knocked them together to make neat logs to be stacked. By the time night came, he had cleared the whole forest. "Can we go home now?" "Yes, but first I want to gather some sticks for the fire." Pinko set hard to work and gathered up so much firewood that even 20 oxen could not have carted it home. Then he lifted the poor woodcutter up and placed him on top of the pile. The very next day, the poor woodcutter went to the rich farmer to tell him that he had felled, cut and stacked all the wood for winter. The farmer was reluctant to believe him, and so he sent servants to see for themselves. They returned in the evening and informed him that the forest had been cleared and neatly stacked for winter. So the rich farmer was forced to pay the poor woodcutter. Then the woodcutter made his way home, where he and Pinko agreed that they should seek work with the Baron the very next day. "You came at the very best time," the Baron told them, "because the field I have to plough would take 100 men, a year and a day to complete." So the old man went to the market with Pinko, where they purchased 2 young calves and then went back to the field to plough it. There were very many men ploughing with a dozen oxen. So Pinko strode out to the middle of the field, and by noon he had already ploughed more than all the other men put together. The other workers were so impressed by Pinko's calves that they asked for what price he would gladly sell them. But Pinko was proud of the calves and asked for a sack of gold along with the 12 oxen. They bargained and bargained until the Baron agreed to pay Pinko's asking price. The sack of gold was measured out for him, he was given the 12 oxen, and then he was sent on his way. The Baron's men began to plough the land with the 2 calves, but however they pulled and pushed the tiny beasts, they would not work. They quickly reported the bad news to the Baron, who ordered them to search for Pinko and bring him back at once. The men soon caught Pinko. Then Pinko took the handle of the plough in one hand, cracked his whip with the other, and the calves began to plough as never before. This is how you should do it, he told them, and he went home. Back at home, he and the woodcutter discussed where Pinko should next seek work, and they agreed that he should visit the king the very next day. You came at the very best time, the king told them, because the corn I have to thresh would take 100 men a year and a day to complete. They went to the barn that was piled to the rafters with corn to be threshed. But Pinko grabbed one stack and threshed it in no time at all. Then he took all the rest of the wheat, oats, millet and barley and threshed it all before the day was done. Then Pinko went to the king to tell him the corn was threshed. "Oh, but you shouldn't have done it like that." "Why, what did I do wrong? The wheat, the barley, the oats and the millet should be separate." "That's no matter. I shall sort them apart." And no sooner had he spoken than, wonder of wonders, the grain all stood in neat piles. "What payment do you ask for your hard work, son?" "Only 1 sack of wheat," Pinko said. "Very well, you may come and collect it whenever you wish." Pinko returned home, and he and the woodcutter gathered all the canvas they could find and spent a week sewing the sack. Now let's go and collect our payment. The next day they reported to the king, who ordered his bailiff to fill Pinko's sack with wheat in payment for his work. Then they went to the barn and began to fill the sack and shovel all the grain in that Pinko had threshed. But that was only enough to fill one small corner of the sack. So the farm bailiff went back to the king and told him the size of the sack that Pinko had sewn. The king said, "I have agreed, and so I shall pay, but he will never be able to take the big sack away with him." So the men continued to fill the sack with last year's grain and the grain from the year before, and the sack still was not full when they had used up wheat from the last 10 years. "What kind of king is this man who cannot pay me for an honest day's work?" Pinko complained to the bailiff. Then Pinko took the enormous sack and swung it over his shoulder, and he and the poor woodcutter left for home. They walked away without even saying goodbye, and when they got home, there was much celebration. Now they had grain, wood, oxen and gold, and could at last live a happy life. As the months turned to years, Pinko said to the woodcutter, "I have been with you now for 3 long years, so I will leave you in the morning." The woodcutter pleaded and appealed for him to stay, but Pinko left for home. And when Pinko got home, there was much celebration, and they all lived happily ever after.